Well, many weeks ago, we started a series in Cranston on the Beatitudes. We've been interrupted many times. We've been interrupted by other topics that became important. We got interrupted by the Easter season with Palm Sunday in there as well. But most obviously and importantly, we got interrupted by church cancellations and all of the crazy things that have been happening in the world around us. But now, on the Sunday before April 24th, we will be concluding this series of the Beatitudes and looking at merciful peacemakers. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor is attacked by pilots and bombers fighting under the flag of the Empire of Japan. December 8th, 1941, the United States Treasury Department seizes all Japanese banks and businesses operating within the borders of the United States of America. December 9th, many Japanese language schools across the country are closed. January 14th, President Roosevelt orders re-registration of suspected enemy aliens throughout the country. January 27th, Los Angeles City and County discharges all people of Japanese descent on civil service payrolls. March 2nd, Lieutenant General John DeWitt issues Proclamation Number 1, designating the western half of the three Pacific Coast states of California, Oregon, and Washington, and the southern third of Arizona as military areas, and stipulating that all persons of Japanese descent would eventually be removed. March 7th, the United States Army acquires a site in Owens Valley, California, which eventually becomes the Manzanar Detention Center. Eventually, several other detention centers across California and the American West are established, including one in Fresno, California. Between 1942 and 1946, thousands upon thousands of American citizens who happened to also be of Japanese descent were uprooted from their homes, transferred to these prison camps, and held simply because they were Japanese. Many of the young men who came from these camps entered military service and were shipped out to Europe to fight. Many of those uprooted from their homes never regained their homes, their furniture, and most possessions too big to move in their trucks that went to the camps. They lost their businesses, their neighborhoods. Many of those Japanese American citizens lost everything. In September 1942, a man by the name of Mike Bluyan of Fresno, California, gave his daughter Alice a bicycle. The bicycle belonged to a friend of little Alice, another little girl named Yoshino Uemura. Mike Bluyan made little Alice promise that someday, when the opportunity presented itself and the little Japanese girl returned from the internment camp where she had been sent, Alice should return the bicycle. These two girls lived apart from those moments on, but not that far apart. They lived within 20 miles of each other for most of their lives. They went to UCLA at the same time, but they didn't know each other. Alice married Robert Kazurian and raised 6 children in Rolinda, California. Yoshino, eventually called Elaine by her friends and her family, married and raised these 3 children in Selma, California. These 2 places are outside of Fresno and 20 miles apart. One day, the promise little Alice made her father rose up in her mind. Somehow, probably with the help of the internet, she located Elaine Uemura. 61 years after the promise was first made to her dad, at a local burger joint in Fresno, California, Alice Bluyan Kazurian returned the very same but now beautifully restored bicycle her father gave her to its rightful owner, to Elaine Uyemura Emoto. At the time, Alice Kazarian was a member of the Pilgrim Armenian Congregational Church of Fresno, California. The basic facts of this story appeared in the AEUNA, Armenian Evangelical Union of North America's newsletter, which was distributed in the summer of 2003. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. We don't know the mind of Mike Bluyan from 78 years distance. What was he trying to do by giving this bike to his daughter? Was he trying to take advantage of the situation, giving his daughter a bicycle he found leaning against a white picket fence in front of an abandoned house in the summer of 1942? Did he just want to give his daughter a bicycle he knew he would not be able to afford any other way? Was he being sneaky and opportunistic, figuring that the rightful owner of the bike would never come looking for it? If so, the promise he asked his daughter to make was just an afterthought, a cynical way of calming a guilty conscience and denying that anything was wrong. But perhaps this was something very different. It could have been an act that followed a different logic, a different wisdom, one not born on earth. We don't know. This act could have been born in an unspiritual, devilish, envious mind run by selfish ambition and wickedness, as the words from the book of James might outline. But perhaps this act was conceived out of the wisdom from above. Perhaps it was pure, again, in the language of the book of James. Maybe this act of Mike Bluyan's of giving his child a bicycle and making her promise to return it is an act of mercy. Did he know what it was like to lose everything in a land called home, in which one felt safe and in which one's family and people had hoped to find refuge? Had he known firsthand in his own childhood the experience of being uprooted and losing everything? A father in 1942, perhaps he was a boy about his daughter's age in 1915. Had he been in Turkey? Did he remember similar deportations and, even worse, torturing and annihilation at the hands of a government that should have been protecting him? Did he himself make a promise to that little Japanese girl who once lived in that abandoned house down the street, if only in his own heart, that somehow her entire childhood would not be lost as his had been? Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Did Mike Bluyan also somehow know the heart and mind of his own daughter, knowing that she could never swallow the situation as is, that she would never forget her friend, that she would somehow hold on to a small piece of this poor friend's childhood, safe and secure? Maybe he knew or held in faith that this little girl somehow had the courage and the will to render this profound promise that she had made to her dad meaningful. And what was Alice Kazarian thinking? Was she just trying to keep the promise because she had made it to her dad? Did she simply perform a random act of kindness in her father's name? Or was she making a deeper statement, acting out of a wish to make a deeply wrong situation a little bit more right? Was she perhaps hoping to perform an act of justice and make peace in a situation where there had only been violence, wartime horror, and injustice? Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. We live in a world today that feels neither peaceful nor can we feel active. In days of social distancing, quarantine, illness, and fear, there is little peace. In Belmont, Massachusetts, the town where I grew up and my parents still live, at a nursing home where schoolmates and I volunteered back when I was a teen, 30 residents have died in the last 2 weeks from COVID-19. In a facility which has 135 beds and 190 employees, 116 residents and 59 employees have tested positive for coronavirus. National Guard medics have been called in to test everyone affiliated with the facility to separate the healthy and keep them virus-free and safe. We live in a world where we are struggling to figure out what to do. To be a peacemaker is to be actively involved in making peace, in being merciful. But many of us can do nothing about the situation we're in now. Many are unable to work. Hospitals are full of sick, lonely patients who are not allowed to have even their families visit. We don't know what to do. We don't even know often how to get our hands on masks if we are compelled to go out. We feel powerless. We feel stuck. Peace? We can't make peace. How can we be merciful if we can't even leave our homes? Is it possible to do anything to create the heaven on earth experience the Sermon on the Mount outlines? How can we actively participate in the building of a kingdom of God the Beatitudes describes when we don't really know what to do? Of course, there is much we can do to be peacemakers in this time. We can begin with prayer. We can pray for each other, for those who are suffering, for those who are alone, for those who are toiling in hospitals, in nursing homes, as first responders, in support of sick family members. We can also support others like those first responders. This week, I was in a store picking up trash bags and, yes, some materials the store was giving away and making available so that we can make our own masks at home. As I waited in line, an announcement went out over the store's PA system. We'd like to thank our patron who just made a $5 donation in support of first responders. Let's give them a woo-woo, and everybody in the store erupted, woo, and just started cheering. I couldn't cheer. I felt emotion well up inside of me. I've heard of many folks who are making masks, who are buying food or donating food as takeout restaurants that are making too much and can't sell it all, and protective equipment even, and cleaning equipment, and donating it to nursing homes and rehab centers and hospitals. What can we do stuck at home to show mercy? What can we do when we're sheltering in place to be a peacemaker? We can celebrate the birthday of a despondent teenager who's so upset that he can't get together with his family and friends. We can get together with them on Zoom and celebrate. We can pick up the telephone and call someone we haven't talked to or heard from in ages. There is much we can do. For the first time in 105 years, we will be unable to commemorate the Armenian genocide. This week would have been the week we gathered at our monuments, in our public places, with local politicians and school children in tow to remember the genocide. But this year, we are stuck at home. But we can be creative. Like Mike Bluyan did 78 years ago, and his daughter Alice did 17 years ago, and find ways to reach out, to show the wisdom from above, and to commemorate the genocide by being peacemakers, by undoing the horror, the loneliness, the brokenness of the world we live in. By so doing, we become peacemakers. We show mercy, and we build up the kingdom of God.